It's time to get crackin'. 5 weeks ago, I did a video about the incredible price premiums for PSA 10s over other grading companies. And while I might think it's a little absurd, that doesn't mean that you and I can't both profit from it. Let's bust some slabs open and make some money together. Let's date it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and a special shout out this week to my guy Justin for this epic rabbit hole shirt. You know I love to go down the rabbit hole, and you can follow him at the Rabbit Hole Cards on Instagram because that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go down the infinite sea of all the cards in Market Movers, and we're going to figure out a way to make some money. I know all you collectors out there groaning, another investor video, ugh, but hold up. This one is for everyone. Now, if you go back into the video archives on this channel, I did a video 5 weeks ago called The PSA 10 Premium is Out of Control, where I broke down just how much more a PSA 10 is selling for above not only PSA 9s, but also above BGS 9.5s and SGC 10s, sometimes as much as 2x. Now, I think that premium makes very little sense. With that being said, it is the way that it is, and the market has spoken. They love PSA, I do too, and I also love reliable ways to make money. And even if your primary motivation isn't to make money in this hobby, it doesn't mean you can't use this tactic to fund your own personal collection. In fact, that's what the vast majority of people I know in this hobby love to do. So this week, I'm gonna show you how I identify great card candidates to crack out of existing cases and to send into PSA in hopes of getting that PSA 10 gem mint price premium. As always, this video is brought to you by Market Movers. Visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE when you check out. You'll get 14 days completely free to try out Market Movers and then 20% off for life as long as you're subscribed. Now let's get into the data. All right, so let's set the table a little bit. What's the overall approach here? Before you just go buying up every BGS 9.5 or SGC 10 in sight and cracking them open, you need to take some things into consideration. You need to factor in taxes. How much in taxes you're gonna pay when you buy these cards if you buy them online at like a site like eBay. Shipping costs as well. The cost to grade these cards. The downside of a PSA 9 versus the upside of a PSA 10, as well as selling fees. And there's always that slight risk, especially if you're not a pro, that you crack it open and you mess it up really badly. Now, I did a YouTube video 2 years ago, and here's that video on my screen right now. It's called The 3 Biggest Factors When Grading Your Cards. You can search that on YouTube, on our channel. And on this video, I kind of broke down some of the ways to look at that. So if you really want to go into detail about those factors, this was kind of about having raw cards and whether or not you should grade them. And what I did is I walked through, this little chart. I'll kind of explain it here. PSA 10 versus PSA 9. And again, this is like looking at the raw value of a card at $75. Back then, the cost to grade that card was $60. You can tell grading has come down a lot. And we're gonna look at those prices in a moment with PSA. Gem rate on a card, you wanna take that into consideration. Why? Because you're trying to predict what your probability with, let's say, any given card is of getting a gem mint PSA 10 on that card. This is assuming you look the card over and it looks really good to you. I typically still like to go by gem rate and definitely not better than that to say, what are my chances of getting a PSA 10 versus a 9? So that's you look at the card, you wipe it down, get any smudges or whatever off of it, you sleeve it up, and then you sort of flip the coin. Okay, it's a 49% gem rate. So then what I did is I looked at the value of a PSA 10 and a PSA 9. I looked at what my projected profit could be versus loss if it gets a 9. And then I sort of averaged out that value here as kind of as a combination of the gem rate. So what's the probability of getting those, and net of cost, what's my probable revenue? So that's assuming you had like 10 cards. I was looking at this Joe Burrow card and saying, what if I send in 10 of these? I looked them all over. How do I make money on this? Now in this case, this week in particular, we're not looking at raw cards. We're looking at taking cards that are already graded by another company, that they've already determined this is a card in gem mint condition. And I think you could go above gem rate. If a card typically has a 49% gem rate, maybe you say that you would expect this one to go 60, 70, even 80% of the time cross over to a PSA 10. It should. The grading companies in general, should be viewing gem mint cards largely the same with some caveats that we'll talk through. So what's the cost of grading right now with PSA? If we go over to their website, you can see they've got all the costs broken down on their website. You can also go to our website, sportscardinvestor.com/grading, to use our partner at Got Baseball Cards. They even do a pre-screening for $2 a card if you want them to look the cards over. But with all that being said, generally speaking, that's what the prices are right now. $19 a card on a declared value of $500 or less. On these types of things, you can read through all the descriptions, but in most cases, we would expect that it's somewhere between $19 to $75 a card for some of the cards that we're going to be looking at in those price points. This will get you up to $1,500. You might have to go up to $130 on cards as those prices go up. That is the one downside of going with PSA, is that they will even upcharge you. If your card does really well and they determine that it's above, the value of it is above the price threshold that you submitted at, they'll give you an upcharge, which can be pretty expensive for really, really high-end cards if that's within your budget. So all that being said, we set the table. There's two main ways that you can use market movers to identify candidates for grading. And the first is to use our intelligence reports. Now, you want to note, this feature is available to unlimited members only. So this is a power tool that people who are really analytical like to use. And what I've done is I've come in here to our grade ratios, and I've put in some PSA 10 to BGS 9.5, a couple of different sets from Prism Basketball and Prism Football, and I ran these stats, and what this does is it's comparing the price of these cards across all those featured cards in our database. I threw in a $50 minimum current price on those cards. Why did I do that? Because you can't justify the cost of grading and the taxes and the shipping and the selling fees on cards below that. You might even want to go higher than this on a BGS 9.5, but this is sort of where I set it. You're going to pay at least 20 bucks to get it graded. You've got to ship the cards off to the grading destination or to Got Baseball Cards. So there's a lot to factor in there. You want to keep really good records of that, put it all into a spreadsheet or something. But as I scroll down, I can use this tool, and what it's showing me is the price of identical cards where all things are the same. The player is the same, the card, the variation. The only thing that differs is that grade, PSA 10 to BGS 9.5. And I can see, for example, that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's Pink Ice from his Prism rookie year is at a 2.25x multiplier. But really in this case, it's not so much the multiplier that we're looking at, it's just the price gap. How many dollars difference are these cards? So if I look at this, these both sold, by the way, all of these will have sold in the last 30 days, so the prices should be relevant. There's a big gap here. You're looking at a gap of about $175 between these two cards. And you can hit this little chart icon. It'll pull these cards up, charting over time if you want to look at the last 365 days and see how these are going. You can see not a lot of BGS 9.5s. In fact, only one BGS 9.5. That shows the stranglehold, frankly, that PSA has had over the modern market. But that one sold for $140. I imagine that person got a really, really good deal. Let's say you buy that card, you look it over, subgrades look good, and we're going to talk more about that too, but overall the card looks good in the slab. It's a BGS 9.5. You crack it out. Nice thing about BGS, by the way, they have that inner sleeve, which does help add some protection when you're cracking the cards out so you don't accidentally scratch the surface or ding a corner or an edge. It's not going to fix centering, but all those other three things, it does help protect it as you take it out. You just got to be really careful when you cut it out of that inner sleeve. So in this case, you get it back, you crack it out, you send it in for $20 for grading. Maybe you're paying tax on that. Let's call this fully loaded $180. No, let's call it $200, okay? And you send it to PSA and you get it back and it gets a PSA 10. That's $115, take 13% fees. You're still looking to make, maybe conservatively, 75 bucks on this card. But I'd also want to know what the downside is with a PSA 9 of that particular card. So what you're gonna do while you're charting this, I'm gonna pop this open. I can come over here, view on charts, and then I can look at the other grades of this card on the same chart. So I'm gonna come over here, I'll look at this. Let's see what a PSA 9 does of this card. So a PSA 9 is gonna do $90. So your downside on this, if you grade it and you add all that in, if you call it $200, downside might outweigh the upside in this case. You're standing to lose about $110 if it gets a PSA 9, whereas PSA 10 we said you might make 75 bucks. Okay, maybe that's not a great candidate. Maybe you want to up your price threshold on this. What about this one? This Luka Doncic Prism Hyper. This one's got a huge price difference. It's still below that threshold of $1,500. So you're probably gonna have to pay, $75 to grade this card. But you can start to do the math. You can go through and approach this on any set that you want to. One thing I might recommend is looking on GemRate, looking on PSA's website to find some sets where the gem rate in general is higher. And if you can, count on that a little bit more reliably, that if you have a BGS 9.5, it's even more likely to cross. The flip side is if the gem rate is actually much lower and you find a really good condition in another company's gem mint, maybe that works to your advantage if the gap is even higher on a PSA 10 if it's a very low pop 20, pop 30 type card. So that is the primary method that you can use. That is the feature in intelligence reports that is available to unlimited users. Now, what about the other method that I wanted to talk about? So that second method, and this is open to everyone who subscribes to Market Movers, which by the way, if you go to marketmoversapp.com and you use promo code DIVE, you can sign up for starter plan for $7.99 a month, as low as $7.99 a month. That'll get you started with charts, and it'll also get you access to this page, which is our price movements. So I did something similar here. This is really nice. We are basically at 3 million cards in our featured card database now. We're like 30,000 short as of recording this video. So we're close. We're gonna be celebrating that awesome milestone. I come to this page, I put in a minimum price of $50 again, and I put in BGS 9.5, I put in SGC 9.5, and I put in SGC 10, and then I'm looking over the last 30 days for cards that have sold, and I put in a minimum number of sales of 4. Why do I do that? Because I've got to be able to find a copy of this card for sale in one of these grades to sort of hone in on it. This is where it helps to look at cards that sell more frequently where there's still that big price gap. If you can laser in on a few of these, you know what to look for. Something, for example, like this Tiger Woods Upper Deck base card. BGS 9.5, this makes it even easier on this screen. So this card sold recently for $93.50. So if I click on this card, you're gonna get this flyout that pops out. Like I said, this card last sold for $93.50. And it's also gonna show you the recent comps down here, so you can kind of spot check those quickly. Like, okay, realistically though, what can I get this card for? Well, you had 2 sales that averaged out at $93.50, one at $115, $89. You can kind of click through these. So even if you call this $100, $106 with tax, $110 with shipping, call it $110, you can easily switch the grade up here and see PSA 10, $300. So you could grab one of these BGS 9.5s, $110, $115 fully loaded. You crack it out, you send it in for $20 to PSA, maybe tack on another $10 for shipping for that card overall, and you're at, what does that put you at? 140, let's call it, 140, 145, and you could make $155. What if it gets a 9? Well, I guess you're gonna lose about $100. But if you feel like that gem rate opportunity with it being a BGS 9.5 has a good chance to cross over, this is one where I might actually look to buy in volume. I might look to buy 10 of these and maybe 7 or 8 of them, cross over well and you make some money that way. This is how I would approach this. I know a lot of people who have had a lot of success with this. It is still a gamble. There's absolutely no guarantee that you're gonna make your money back. You might lose the money, who knows? I know people who will crack them out and send them again, roll the dice again, all the way until they're down to 0 potentially. It's up to you, but this is a strategy that does work for a lot of people. So if I click on this Zion Williamson, for example, this one, $172 in a BGS 9.5, in a PSA 10, $435. So this is the other way that I would approach this. And you've got tons and tons and tons of data here. I mean, seriously, so if you're somebody, for example, who likes to collect base rookie cards in PSA 10 condition, or even in PSA 9 condition, and you want to sort of self-fund some of those adds to your PC, you could try this, you could roll the dice, you can pick up some of these cards and add them to your collection that way. Like I said, you buy 4, 5, 6 of them, you grade them, you sell off the majority, you keep one back for your collection, and suddenly that one didn't cost you anything other than your own time and money. Now, one final note about BGS in particular, and that's that the subgrades can be great. So there's subgrades on the BGS labels, unlike the other companies. I will tell you, PSA tends to be more lenient, slightly at least, on centering, especially if the centering issue is on the back of the card. So if you find a BGS 9.5 with 9 or better centering, and then 9.5 or 10 on surface, edges, and corners, that's a great crack and cross candidate typically. You can also even try cracking a BGS 9 with favorable subgrades. Let's say you're hoping for a PSA 9. Sometimes that can actually even break you even. If you buy a BGS 9 and you crack it and cross it and it gets a PSA 9, sometimes that'll break you even. and you just might even land a 10. I've seen that happen more than a few times. I see this all the time. Like I said, I have a lot of friends in the hobby who like to do this. It can be pretty controversial. Some people will say, hey, at least do the justice to the pop reports. If you crack something out, send a note to the company and with the cert number and say, I cracked this out, please remove it from your registry. Whether or not they do that is up to them. But overall, I want to know, are you up for this challenge? Are you going to take a stab at cracking some cards out and trying to make a little bit of money, or maybe just to help grow your own PC? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, do me a huge favor, like this video, make sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, follow the Rabbit Hole Cards on Instagram. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.